My name is Halil Ibn Rashid Al-Mansuri. I am 24 years old, and by the time you hear this I may already be dead. I need you to understand who I was before all of this. I was a doctoral candidate at the National University's Institute of Islamic Studies, third year, top of my class. My dissertation was on Islamic philosophy and Hellenistic thought. Dry, academic, harmless. My father was an imam. My mother kept my academic certificates next to the Quran in our living room like they were holy things themselves. I had a government scholarship, a teaching position, marriage proposals from good families. I had everything. I was not a rebel. I was not some angry young man looking to destroy his life. I prayed 5 times a day, every day, without fail. I fasted, I studied, I was exactly what they wanted me to be. Exactly what I wanted to be. But I was curious. God help me, I was curious. It started 6 months ago. Maybe 7 now? I've lost track of time in this place. I was researching medieval Islamic responses to Christian theology. The scholars in Al-Andalus in Spain, they wrote these brilliant refutations of Christian doctrines. The Trinity, the Incarnation, the Resurrection. But to understand their arguments, I needed to know what they were arguing against. I needed to read the source material. That's what I told myself anyway. Just research, just scholarship, nothing dangerous. The university library had Bibles in the restricted section, locked away behind metal gates. You needed faculty permission, written justification. Your request went into your permanent record. I thought about it for weeks, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The risk felt too great. What would people think? What would my advisor say? What would my father say? Then one afternoon in late April, I found it. I was leaving the library, walking through the main courtyard. The sun was setting, maybe an hour before the call to Maghrib prayer. And there on the low wall outside, someone had left a book. Just ... Small, black leather, worn at the edges, no title on the cover. Students left books there, sometimes textbooks they didn't need anymore, notes, whatever. I almost walked past it, but something made me stop. Something made me look around to see if anyone was watching. Something made me pick it up ... and open it. The Gospel according to Matthew, my heart. God, my heart started pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I looked around again. The courtyard was nearly empty. Just some students by the fountain, too far away to see what I was holding. I had maybe 15 minutes before the prayer call, before the campus would fill with people. I should have left it there. I should have reported it. I should have walked away. Instead, I slipped it into my bag. Beneath my notebooks, beneath my copy of Al-Ghazali, I felt the weight of it there, this small, dangerous thing. My hands were shaking. My mouth was dry. I kept expecting someone to stop me, to call out, to demand to know what I was hiding. No one did. I made it back to my apartment, locked the door, performed my ablutions with trembling hands, prayed Maghrib, but the words felt hollow, like the prayer itself knew I had already crossed some line. And then, as the light faded outside my window, I sat on the floor and opened the book. I told myself I would read it critically, analytically, like a scholar, not a seeker. I was looking for theological errors, contradictions, things to refute. I was prepared to be unimpressed, but the words ... the words got inside me. The genealogy at the beginning, all those unfamiliar names. Then the story of Jesus' birth, the beginning of his ministry. The language was simple, direct, nothing like the complex theological texts I was used to, and yet there was power in it. Something that bypassed all my training, all my defenses, and spoke directly to something deep inside me I didn't even know was there. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. I read until the room went dark. Then I turned on the lamp and kept reading. I read through the call to Isha, the night prayer. Missing a prayer time for the first time in my life? I read until my eyes burned, until my back ached, until hours had passed and I hadn't moved, hadn't eaten, had barely breathed. When I finally closed the book, my hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. From something else. Something I couldn't name. I felt like I'd been standing on solid ground my entire life and suddenly discovered it was just a thin crust over some vast ... emptiness. Everything I thought I knew felt uncertain. unstable. I told myself it was just the strangeness of it, the shock of encountering unfamiliar ideas. Tomorrow, I thought, tomorrow in the daylight I would think clearly again. I would analyze it properly, critically, the way I'd been trained, but I knew. Even then I knew I was going to read it again, and again, and again. I didn't know then that this small black book would cost me everything. My family, my future, my freedom. I didn't know that in 6 months I would be sitting in a cell, waiting to die, with the word apostate branded across my name like a curse. But even if I had known, even if someone had told me that opening that book would lead me here, to this darkness, to this terror, to tomorrow's execution, I don't know if I could have walked away. Because something had already begun, something I couldn't stop, something that felt like drowning and waking up at the same time. The truth is, I wasn't found, I was caught. And the difference between those two things, the difference is everything. It started innocently enough. At least that's what I told myself. Every night after the last prayer, I would sit in my apartment with the curtains drawn and read. Just a few pages at first. Just enough to satisfy my academic curiosity. Just enough to confirm what I'd been taught my whole life. That this was a corrupted text, a distorted message, nothing that could challenge what I already knew to be true. But the pages turned into chapters. The chapters turned into books. Matthew became Mark, became Luke, became John. And with each word, each parable, each teaching, something inside me began to crack open. The Sermon on the Mount destroyed me. I don't know how else to say it. Those words, they weren't what I expected. They weren't aggressive or triumphalist. They were gentle, radical, uncomfortable. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. I started comparing. I couldn't help it. Late at night, I would have both books open, the Quran on my right, the Bible on my left, looking for contradictions, looking for proof that one negated the other. But what I found instead was ... complexity, beauty in both, truth that felt layered, not simple. And Jesus, the Jesus in these pages wasn't the prophet I'd been taught about. He was more. He claimed things that made my breath catch in my throat. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Before Abraham was, I am. These weren't the words of a prophet. These were the words of something else, someone else I tried to stop. God knows I tried. I would go days without opening the book, burying it in the back of my closet, telling myself this was dangerous, this was harem, this was going to destroy everything I'd worked for. But then the hunger would return, this terrible, beautiful hunger, and I would find myself reaching for it again in the darkness, reading by the dim light of my phone so no one outside could see the lamp on at 3 a.m. I stopped sleeping well. I lost weight. My advisor noticed, asked if I was ill. My mother called and said I sounded tired, asked if I was studying too hard. My friends at the university joked that I'd become a ghost, always disappearing, always distracted. They didn't know how close to the truth they were. I was haunting my own life, present but not present, going through the motions while my interior world was being torn apart and rebuilt into something I didn't recognize. The prayers became harder. 5 times a day I would go through the movements, the words, but they felt hollow now. Not because I'd stopped believing in God, ... but because my understanding of who God was had shifted in ways I couldn't articulate. The certainty I'd always had, that clear, clean line between truth and falsehood, between the faithful and the kafir ... it was blurring. And that terrified me more than anything. I should have known I couldn't keep this hidden forever. I should have known that secrets have weight, that they change the way you move through the world, that eventually someone notices. It was my roommate from first year who saw it first, Rashid. We'd stayed friends even after we moved into separate apartments. He would drop by sometimes, unannounced, the way close friends do, and one evening in late September ... he came by while I was reading. I heard the knock. I panicked. Shoved the Bible under the couch cushion, grabbed a textbook, tried to look casual, but when I opened the door, Rashid looked at me strangely. He could see the sweat on my forehead, the guilt written across my face. "What's wrong with you?" he asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost?" "Nothing," I said, "just tired." Too much work. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes. But he let it go that night. Stayed for tea, talked about his own research, about a girl his parents wanted him to meet, about nothing important. But the whole time, he kept watching me, studying me, like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. I should have been more careful after that. I should have stopped, destroyed the book, gone back to the life I knew, but I was too far gone by then. The transformation had already happened. I was just waiting for the world to catch up. The end came on a Thursday. I remember because I'd taught my undergraduate seminar that morning, a discussion on Al-Farabi's concept of the virtuous city. I remember thinking how ironic it was, talking about the ideal Islamic society while I was hiding the very thing that would exile me from any society at all. I came home that afternoon exhausted. It was October, the heat finally breaking, the air carrying that particular smell of autumn even in the desert. I made tea, I sat by the window, and I pulled out the Bible. In daylight, for the first time, I don't know why. Maybe I was tired of hiding. Maybe I'd convinced myself no one would come. Maybe some part of me wanted to be caught. I was reading the Gospel of John when the door crashed open. 3 men. Plain clothes, but I knew immediately they were religious police. They moved through my apartment like predators, systematic, thorough. One of them grabbed the Bible from my hands before I could even think to hide it. The other 2 started searching ... and they found my notes. Pages and pages of comparisons, questions, reflections, evidence of months of secret study. Evidence of doubt, evidence of the word they would use later ... apostasy. They didn't speak much, didn't need to. One of them made a phone call. 10 minutes later, 2 more men arrived. These ones wore uniforms. Halil bin Rashid al-Mansuri, one of them said, "You are under arrest for crimes against the state and against God. You are charged with apostasy, possession of forbidden materials, and corruption of Islamic teachings." My hands were shaking, my whole body was shaking. I tried to speak, to explain, to say this was research, just research, but the words wouldn't come. They bound my hands behind my back with plastic zip ties that cut into my wrists. They put a hood over my head. And they led me down the stairs of my building while my neighbors watched in silence. I never saw my apartment again. Never saw my books, my research, my life. It all disappeared in the space between one breath and the next. The last thing I remember thinking before they threw me into the vehicle, before the hood and the darkness and the beginning of everything that would follow, was that I'd been right. There was a difference between being found and being caught. Being found implies you were lost, that someone came looking, that there was mercy in the discovery. Being caught means you were prey all along, and the hunter always knew where you were. The cell. God, the cell. They took the hood off and I expected light, but there was only darkness. Not the soft darkness of night, ... but something thicker, heavier, like the darkness had substance, like I could choke on it. They pushed me inside and I heard the metal door slam behind me, heard the lock turn, heard their footsteps fade away until there was nothing but silence. Complete silence. I stood there for, I don't know how long, minutes, hours. Time stopped meaning anything. My eyes tried to adjust, but there was nothing to adjust to. No window, no crack of light under the door, just black, absolute black. The kind of darkness that makes you forget what your own hands look like. I reached out, touched the wall, cold, rough concrete, damp. My fingers came away wet with something. I don't know what. Condensation. Mold? I didn't want to know. The smell hit me then. I don't have words for it. Urine, sweat, fear. Old fear, soaked into the walls by everyone who'd been in this cell before me. And something else, ... something metallic and rotten that made my stomach turn. I felt my way around the space, small, maybe 6 feet by 8. A concrete platform in the corner. A bed, I guess, though there was no mattress, no blanket. The floor was wet in places. I tried not to think about what I was stepping in. In another corner, ... a hole in the ground. The toilet. The smell was strongest there. I backed away quickly, pressed myself against the far wall, tried to breathe through my mouth. But breathing through my mouth meant tasting the air ... and that was worse. I don't know how long I was alone in the darkness. Days ... maybe just hours that felt like days. There was no way to tell. No meals at regular times, just ... times. The slot in the door would open and a tray would slide through. Rice, water, sometimes bread so hard I couldn't bite through it. I would eat in the darkness, touching the food with my fingers, trying not to think about what might be crawling on it. The worst part wasn't the darkness or the smell or the hunger. It was the silence, the absolute, crushing silence. I started talking to myself just to hear a human voice, reciting poetry, counting, praying. Though the prayers felt hollow in that place, like the words were being swallowed by the dark before they could reach heaven. Sometimes I would hear sounds from other cells, screaming, crying, banging on metal doors. Once I heard someone praying, really praying, the full Salah, and I found myself joining in, whispering the words in the darkness. But the voice stopped abruptly in the middle of a verse, and I never heard it again. I lost track of time completely. I couldn't tell if it was day or night. I couldn't tell if I was awake or dreaming. I started hallucinating, seeing lights that weren't there, hearing voices, feeling things crawling on my skin. I would slap at my arms, my legs, but there was never anything there. Just my mind ... breaking. Then one day ... or night, I couldn't tell ... the door opened. Sudden light, blinding after so much darkness. I couldn't see, could only make out shapes. Hands grabbed me, pulled me out. I stumbled, fell, was dragged to my feet. They half carried, half pushed me down a corridor, upstairs, through doors. The light hurt so much I kept my eyes squeezed shut, but even through my eyelids it was painful. They threw me into a chair, metal, cold, my eyes slowly adjusted. Harsh fluorescent lights above me, white walls, a metal table, and across from me ... Two men in plain clothes, one was older, gray beard, calm eyes. The other was younger, harder, with a face that showed no mercy. The older one spoke first. His voice was almost kind, which made it worse somehow. Halil bin Rashid al-Mansari, son of Imam Rashid, doctoral candidate at the National University, top of your class, bright future ahead of you. Why would you throw all of that away? I tried to speak, but my voice came out as a croak. I hadn't used it properly in ... How long? Days? Weeks? They gave me water. I drank, coughed, tried again. I was ... I was doing research for my dissertation. Comparative religion. I needed to understand Christian theology to write about Islamic responses to it. The younger man laughed. Not a kind laugh. Research? You expect us to believe that? We found your notes, Halil. Pages and pages. Questions, doubts, comparisons. You weren't researching. You were converting. No, I swear I was just... The older man held up his hand. Silence fell. Let me tell you what we found in your apartment. A Bible, hidden, notes comparing Islamic and Christian teachings. Journal entries describing your ... confusion, your doubts about the faith you were raised in. Your fascination with Jesus, not as a prophet, but as something more. He leaned forward. We found the word written in your own handwriting. What if he really was who he said he was? My heart stopped. I remembered writing that. Late at night, 3 weeks before they found me. I'd been reading John's Gospel. The claims Jesus made about himself. I am the resurrection and the life. I and the Father are one. Before Abraham was, I am. And in a moment of weakness, of honesty, I'd written that question in my notebook. What if that's just academic inquiry? Exploring hypotheticals, that's what scholars do. The younger man stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. He walked around the table until he was standing behind me. I couldn't see him, but I could feel him there. Feel his presence like a weight on my shoulders, academic inquiry. His voice was quiet now, dangerous. We have witnesses who say you stopped attending Friday prayers regularly. That you seem distracted, distant. That you ask questions about Christian beliefs with too much ... interest. Your roommate, Rashid... He says you were hiding something. Acting strangely, sweating, nervous. Rashid, my friend, he'd reported me. Or they'd questioned him, and he'd told them everything. Either way, he'd helped put me here. You have committed apostasy, the older man said. His voice was still calm, matter of fact, like he was diagnosing a disease. You have read the corrupted scriptures without proper guidance. You have entertained doubts about Islam. You have, by your own written admission, considered the possibility that Jesus was divine, which is shirk, the unforgivable sin. Association of partners with God, I felt cold, spreading through my body. Apostasy, that word. In our country, apostasy carried one sentence. Only one. I never converted. I'm still Muslim. I still pray. Do you believe Jesus was merely a prophet? The younger man's voice right by my ear now. Or do you believe he was something more? I don't answer the question. Silence. What could I say? If I said Jesus was just a prophet, I would be denying what I'd read, what I'd felt, what had become true to me. But if I admitted anything else, I would be signing my own death warrant. I couldn't answer. The interrogation went on for hours. The same questions over and over, the same passages from my notebooks read back to me, the same witnesses quoted. Sometimes the older man would ask the questions, his voice gentle, almost paternal, like he wanted to help me find my way back. Sometimes the younger man would shout, slam his hands on the table, call me traitor, kafir, UNAFIQ ... hypocrite. They never hit me. They didn't need to. The psychological pressure was enough. The exhaustion, the fear, the knowledge that every word I said was being weighed, measured, used against me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they took me back to the cell, back to the darkness, and I collapsed on the concrete platform and wept ... Not from pain, but from the terrible clarity of understanding. There was no way out, no answer I could give that would save me, because the truth was that somewhere in those months of secret reading, somewhere between the Sermon on the Mount and the crucifixion, somewhere in the words, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," something in me had changed, something fundamental, and I couldn't undo it. Couldn't unsee it, couldn't unknow it, even if it killed me. Days passed. More interrogations, more questions. Sometimes they would bring in other men, religious scholars who tried to show me the errors in Christian theology, the contradictions in the Bible, the superiority of Islamic teaching. I listened, I nodded. I gave the answers they wanted to hear. But inside, I knew they couldn't reach the place where the transformation had happened. That place was beyond arguments, beyond logic, beyond fear. Then came the day of the trial. They pulled me out of the cell, gave me clean clothes for the first time in ... weeks, months. I'd lost so much weight the clothes hung on me like I was a child wearing his father's things. They took me to a courtroom. Judges sat behind a long bench, stern faces. No mercy in their eyes. The evidence was presented. The Bible, my notes, testimony from witnesses. Rashid spoke, his voice shaking. He wouldn't look at me. My advisor, Dr. Al-Rifai, spoke about my earlier work, my promise as a scholar, but his voice was defeated. He knew this wasn't a trial. It was a sentencing. They asked me one final time, "Do you renounce these doubts? Do you affirm that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger? Do you reject the claims of Christianity and reaffirm your faith in Islam?" The whole courtroom waited. My father was there, I realized suddenly. In the back, I could see him through the blur of my exhaustion. His face was ... empty, not angry, not sad, just ... empty, like I'd already died and he was looking at a ghost. I opened my mouth. I knew what I should say. The words that would save my life. The simple confession of faith that I'd said thousands of times before. But what came out instead was ... silence. I couldn't say it. Not because I wanted to be defiant, not because I wanted to be a martyr, but because something inside me had changed so completely that the lie wouldn't form, the words wouldn't come. The head judge nodded as if he'd expected this. Halil Ibn Rashid al-Mansuri, you are found guilty of apostasy from Islam. You have rejected the faith, entertained forbidden beliefs, and refused to repent. Under Islamic law, the sentence for apostasy is death. You will be executed by public hanging 3 days from now, at dawn in the central square. May God have mercy on your soul. The gavel came down, and just like that, my life was over. They took me back to the cell after the sentencing. But this time, this time it was different, they told me. 3 days. 3 days until dawn. 3 days until they would lead me out into the central square, put a rope around my neck, and drop me through the trapdoor into eternity. 72 hours to live. I thought I'd been afraid before. In the interrogations, in the trial, in all those weeks in the darkness, but I hadn't known what fear was. Not really. Not until I knew exactly when I was going to die. Not until I could count down the hours, the minutes, the breaths I had left. The first night I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the corner of the cell, my back against the damp wall, and I shook. My whole body shook like I was freezing, even though the air was hot and thick. I tried to pray, tried to reach out to God, to Allah, to whoever was listening, but the prayers died in my throat. What could I say? I'm sorry? But I wasn't sorry, not really. I couldn't be sorry for finding something that felt like truth, even if it cost me everything. Help me. But what help was there? The sentence had been passed. The execution was scheduled. In 3 days I would be dead, and there was nothing that could change that. The second day was worse. They brought me food, but I couldn't eat. The smell made me sick. I kept thinking, this is one of my last meals, this stale bread, this dirty water. This is what my life has been reduced to. I thought about my mother's cooking. The lamb she would make on special occasions, seasoned with cumin and coriander. The sweet tea she would serve in tiny glasses. The sound of her voice when she sang while she worked in the kitchen. I would never taste her food again. Never hear her voice. Never see her face. My father, God, my father. The look in his eyes at the trial, not anger, not even disappointment, just nothing, like I'd already ceased to exist. Like the son he'd raised, the son he'd been proud of, had died the moment they found that book in my apartment. And maybe he was right. Maybe that Halil was already dead. Maybe they were just catching up, making it official. I started crying sometime in the afternoon of the second day. Not quiet tears, sobbing, gasping for air, beating my fists against the concrete floor until my knuckles bled. I didn't want to die. I was 24 years old and I didn't want to die. I had so much life left. So many things I'd never done, never seen, never experienced. And for what? For reading a book? For asking questions? For following something that felt true even when it was dangerous? Was it worth it? That question haunted me. Was any of this worth it? Couldn't I have just pretended, kept my doubts to myself, said the words they wanted to hear and lived? Lived a lie, yes, but lived. Had a wife, children, a career, grown old. Died peacefully in my bed surrounded by family instead of alone in a cell, waiting for a rope. The second night was the longest night of my life. I lay on the concrete platform and stared into the darkness and felt time stretching out, each second lasting an eternity. I could hear my heartbeat, lugub, each beat one beat closer to stopping forever. I wondered what it would feel like. The rope around my neck, the drop, the snap, would it hurt? Would I know I was dying? Or would it just be nothing, instant blackness, instant silence? What came after? That terrified me more than anything. I'd been raised believing in Judgment Day, the weighing of deeds, heaven and hell, but I'd broken the rules. I'd committed shirk, association of partners with God, the unforgivable sin. Did that mean hell, eternal fire, eternal separation from God? But then the Jesus I'd read about. He talked about forgiveness, about mercy, about grace. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. Did I believe in him? I didn't know. I didn't know anything anymore except that I was going to die, and I was so afraid. The third day, the final day, dawn came. I knew because they brought me breakfast earlier than usual. Bread, dates, water, the last meal. I forced myself to eat a little. I didn't want to die with an empty stomach, stupid thought. What difference did it make? The hours crawled by, slower and slower, each one heavier than the last. I found myself counting. 8 hours until execution. 7 hours, 6, each milestone hitting me like a physical blow. By evening, By the final evening, I couldn't even cry anymore. I was empty, hollow. I sat in the corner and I felt nothing, not peace, not acceptance, just thing, like my soul had already started leaving my body, preparing for what was coming. The call to Maghrib prayer echoed from somewhere outside. Sunset, my last sunset. Tomorrow's sunrise would be my last sunrise? And then nothing. Forever, I closed my eyes, tried one more time to pray. But the words wouldn't come, just silence, darkness, and then something changed. I felt it before I saw anything. The air in the cell shifted. The temperature changed. Not warmer, not cooler, just different. Like the atmosphere itself had become charged, electric, alive. I opened my eyes. There was light, not the harsh fluorescent light from the corridor. Not the dim glow of the slot in the door. This was different, soft, golden, coming from nowhere, everywhere, filling the cell, pushing back the darkness, but not harsh, not blinding, gentle like dawn, but warmer, kinder, and in the light, someone was there. I don't know how to explain this. I don't know how to make you understand. He didn't walk through the door. He didn't materialize slowly. He was just like he'd always been there, and I'd only just now become able to see him, a man, but not just a man. I knew. Immediately, without words, without introduction. I knew. Jesus, he looked different than I'd imagined. Not the pale European Jesus from the Christian artwork I'd seen online. His skin was olive, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern. His hair was dark, his beard was dark, his eyes were, God, his eyes, brown, deep, ancient, like they'd seen everything, every pain, every joy, every human moment from the beginning of time. And in those eyes, love. Such overwhelming, impossible love that I couldn't breathe. He was wearing simple clothes, a robe, I think white maybe. I couldn't focus on details because the presence of him filled everything. The light was coming from him. Not glowing dramatically like special effects in a movie, more like he was the source of light itself. Like light was his natural state and the darkness only existed where he wasn't. I tried to speak. My mouth opened but no sound came out. I was paralyzed. Frozen, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of his presence. Like gravity had increased 1,000-fold and I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare. And then he spoke. His voice, I can't describe it. It was gentle. But it filled the cell, filled my head, filled my chest like it was resonating inside my bones. Not loud, but impossible to ignore. And he spoke in Arabic, my Arabic, the dialect of my city. Halil, my name? He said my name. And in that single word was everything. Recognition, knowing, he knew me. Not just my name, but me. Every thought, every doubt, every fear, every moment of secret reading, every question I'd asked, every tear I'd shed, he knew it all. And he was here anyway. Don't be afraid, but I was afraid, terrified, not of him, but of the impossibility of him. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. I was hallucinating. The stress, the fear, the lack of sleep had finally broken my mind, and I was seeing things that weren't there. But then he smiled, a small smile, sad and understanding. Like he knew exactly what I was thinking. I am real, Halil. More real than the walls around you. More real than the fear in your heart. More real than the death that waits for you in the morning. He took a step closer. And I should have backed away, should have pressed myself against the wall. But I couldn't move. And then he knelt down, right there on the filthy floor of my cell, this being of light, this person who I knew in my soul was divine, knelt down in the filth and looked at me eye to eye. You have been searching for truth, he said. And you found me. Do you know who I am? I managed to nod, barely, a tiny movement of my head. Say it, my voice came out as a whisper, cracked, broken. You're Jesus, Isa, you single quotes read ... quote, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he said. And it wasn't arrogant. It wasn't boastful. It was just ... fact, simple, true. I am the light of the world. I am the resurrection, and Halil, I am here for you. Tears started flowing down my face. I couldn't stop them. I'm going to die tomorrow. I know. I'm afraid. I know. I don't want to die. He reached out, slowly, gave me time to pull away if I wanted to. But I didn't, I couldn't, and his hand touched my face. His palm against my cheek, his thumb wiping away my tears. His touch was ... warm, solid, real, more real than anything I'd ever felt. And in that touch ... peace, not the absence of fear, but something stronger than fear. Something that existed alongside the fear and was bigger than it, deeper than it. Halil, he said softly. You are not going to die tomorrow? I stared at him. But ... the execution ... your body may cease. But you ... the real you, the eternal you will not die. Because everyone who believes in me will live, even though they die. Do you believe this? Did I believe? I've been asking myself that question for months. In the secret midnight hours with the Bible, in the interrogation room, in the trial, did I believe? And now, with him kneeling before me, his hand on my face, his eyes looking into mine, The answer was so clear it was like I'd never not known it. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I believe. Then you are already saved. Already mine. Death has no power over you. The grave cannot hold you. And when they put the rope around your neck tomorrow, I will be with you, every second, every breath. You will not walk that path alone, but I'm still going to die. And I died too, he said, on a cross in pain, in shame, forsaken, and 3 days later I rose because death could not contain me. And it cannot contain you either. Not anymore. You are mine, Halil. Mine forever. And nothing, not death, not fear, not hell itself, can take you from my hand. I broke down, completely, sobbing like a child. And he didn't pull away. He pulled me closer, wrapped his arms around me, held me while I cried. And I could feel his heartbeat, steady, strong, real. I'm sorry, I gasped. I'm sorry for everything I did wrong, for every sin. For every ... It's finished, he said. All of it. Every sin, every failure, every moment of doubt. I carried it all. 2,000 years ago, on a hill outside Jerusalem, I paid the price for every wrong thing you've ever done or ever will do. It's finished, Halil. You're forgiven. You're clean. You're free. We stayed like that for, I don't know how long. Time didn't seem to work properly in his presence, maybe minutes, maybe hours. I just know that when he finally pulled back and looked at me again, something inside me had changed. The fear was still there, but it wasn't in control anymore. What happens tomorrow? I asked. Tomorrow you testify, he said. Not with words, with your life, with your death. And people will see, some will harden their hearts, but some ... Some will see and wonder, some will see and question. Some will see and eventually find me the way you did. Your death will plant seeds, Halil. Seeds that will grow in ways you cannot imagine. That's not very comforting. He smiled again, sad but genuine. I never promised comfort. I promised truth. I promised presence. I promised that I would never leave you or forsake you. And I won't tomorrow morning. When they come for you, I'll be there. When they lead you out, I'll be there. When they put the rope around your neck, I'll be there. And when you take your last breath in that body, I'll be there to catch you on the other side. He stood, and I didn't want him to go. I reached out, grabbed his robe like a drowning man grabbing a rope. Don't leave me, please. Don't leave me alone in the dark again. He put his hand over mine. The dark has no power anymore, Halil, because I am the light, and I'm in you now. Your body may be in this cell, but your soul is already home, already safe, already seated with me in heavenly places. This ... He gestured at the cell. This is temporary. What waits for you on the other side? That's forever. The light began to fade. Not abruptly, gently, like sunset. But even as the visible form of him faded, I could still feel him, still sense his presence, like he'd left something of himself behind, or awakened something in me that could now perceive him even when I couldn't see him. And then I was alone again in the darkness, but it wasn't the same darkness anymore. I lay down on the concrete platform, my last night alive, and for the first time in weeks ... I slept, really slept, deep and dreamless and peaceful, because I wasn't afraid anymore. I was going to die in the morning, but I had already been saved.